It was the summer of 1952, and the air hung heavy with the scent of honeysuckle drifting through the open windows of my grandmother's house. I remember the way sunlight pooled in the hallway like spilled gold, climbing the faded wallpaper in trembling shapes. That house sat at the very edge of the village, where the road turned from cracked cobble to dirt, and the wind carried the smell of the marsh. I was 10, and the world still seemed too wide to hold in my hands. Afternoons were quiet there. My grandmother would knit in the low chair by the front window, her fingers moving as though about something else entirely. I would page lazily through books I could barely understand, drifting towards sleep in that slow, syrupy warmth. Yet sometimes a strange stillness would come over the house, moments when the floorboards seemed to hold their breath. And even the birds outside fell silent. It was on one such afternoon that I first noticed the door at the far end of the upstairs corridor. I don't recall it being there before, though perhaps I had simply never looked. Narrow, painted the same pale green as the walls, it seemed almost shy, half swallowed by the shadows where the light never reached. When I asked my grandmother about it, she didn't lift her eyes from her knitting. "That's not our door," she said softly, and then, as if catching herself, added, "It sticks too much to be of any use." That night I heard it. Just a sound at first, a faint dragging, as though someone were moving something heavy across the floor above my room. But there was no room above mine, not on the plans my grandfather had sketched years before. The marsh waited beyond those walls, dark and still. In the days that followed, the sound returned, always at the same hour, just after dusk, when the sky bled into murky indigo. Some nights it was accompanied by a soft whisper, indistinct and close. So close I'd hold my breath to hear. It might have been my name, or perhaps something shaped like it, but older, worn smooth by years beyond counting. I told my grandmother, and she nodded once, slowly, as though confirming an unpleasant truth. "You mustn't open it," she said. "And you mustn't listen too long. It's polite to leave such things alone." Her fingers trembled over her knitting then, though she worked quickly to hide it. The house was never loud, but now it seemed to press in on me, heavy with something unspoken. I saw how my grandmother avoided the upstairs corridor, how her eyes would flick toward it and then away, as if glancing at someone she did not wish to acknowledge. One evening, curiosity overcame fear. I crept up the stairs with a candle, its wavering flame casting long, crooked shadows across the walls. The green door stood ahead, small and the brass knob felt cool beneath my hand. It was not locked. The door opened just a crack, enough for the candlelight to lean inside. What I saw was not another room, not exactly, more like a corridor of pale boards, narrow enough that the walls seemed to press against you. It stretched forward in dim light that came from nowhere. At the far end stood a figure, turned away, facing a wall. The air shifted then, carrying the smell of marsh water, thick, stagnant, old. My candle flickered, though there was no wind, and the figure, so far ahead, stirred slightly. I couldn't tell if it was moving or if the world itself was bending toward me. A noise rose in that narrow space, low and soft, like a memory being repeated. I heard my name this time, without doubt, and with it a promise I hadn't made in waking life. The figure began to turn. I shut the door. The house seemed to sigh around me. My grandmother said nothing when I came down, though later that night she sat by my bed and placed a hand over mine. "It's older than the house," she whispered, not looking at me. Older than the marsh. It comes for those who answer. I never went near the door again, not while she lived. After she passed, the house was sold, its rooms emptied like the inside of a shell. I heard it was demolished years later, though sometimes, near the marsh, I think I see shapes in the mist that match the crooked lines of its roof. Last winter, sorting through a box of her things, I found a small brass key wrapped in a faded handkerchief. I recognized it instantly, though I had never seen it before. It was cold to the touch, smelling faintly of marsh water. And somewhere, far away but very near, I heard the slow, patient sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor.